There are countless resources to help you step up your game when it comes to competitive Pokemon. Whether it is analyzing the metagame, fine-tuning your team, or optimizing your practice routines, I have compiled what I believe to be the best 5 tools available right now. So today we will be going over these resources along with how to actually use them effectively. We are going to kick this list off with LabMouse. Now, LabMouse is a compilation of popular teams, usage stats, all the like from online tournaments, IRL tournaments, including regionals, nationals, all that kind of stuff. And of course, you are going to be greeted immediately with the most recent IRL tournament on their homepage. And immediately you're going to see stuff like team composition, items, Pokemon, top Pokemon usage. They have their own rating system as well, which I'm not going to actually break down today, but they have that as well. You see popular Terra types, right? You get the full team list of the results as well, right? You get popular move choices, tons of data right here in front of you. And it is absolutely incredible because you can do this for other tournaments as well, right? You have any online tournament. Okay, let's say, take for example, Saturday SmackDown's number 3. Boom. I now have all the data from Saturday SmackDown number 3, but I find this, if I'm looking at specific tournaments, I do generally like to look at some of the more official tournaments, right? And in this case, Dortmund was the most recent one here. As the page loads up, we've got Dortmund, right? And you just look at team compositions here. You can do this very, very briefly, very, very quickly. And it's no surprise that like Fluttermane and Ogerpon Water are at the top, especially in today's current metagame. It's not a surprise, right? But it does kind of solidify ideas that you may have had. It allows you to kind of look and say, Urshifu Dark is doing a lot better than I thought it was, right? Or Urshifu Dark plus Ogerpon Water is a really good core, right? Now, I'm not saying these things are very difficult to come across yourself if you're just looking at data, but what I do think LabMouse is really, really good at is compiling the data for you. I no longer have to sit through 17 tournaments now to find this data. I no longer have to count manually of what was happening at Dortmund to see this stuff. And I can do this in an instant because it's already done for me, right? Oh, I want 4 Pokemon cores of 4. Boom, right here, right? Like now I can just look at, core Pokemon 4 from Dortmund. This is what was good at Dortmund. Right, it is a very good metagame at a glance spot, right? You see Assault Vest being one of the most popular items as well. There are tons of opportunities here as well, but another page that I think is really, really good outside of the data compilation is their top teams page. And that's because they compile everything and they say, hey, look, here's all the top teams right now. You can do this once again based on a team of 5, a team of 4, a team of 6. I do like looking at teams of 6, but sometimes, you have a team of 4 in mind and then you can go, okay, yeah, I really like this Shen Pao Raging Bolt Incin Urshifu core, right? Oh, it's got a 69% win rate. That's really cool. And something else that I really like about LabMouse is all of a sudden, boom, I can now click on this team, right? I click on team composition. I say, okay, what's doing well here? Oh, Sempra's variant looks very, very cool. Let me just pull up the Pokepaste real quick, right? It's an open Pokepaste, but now I can see what moves they were running, kind of the team composition. Obviously, I'll have to slap on EVs and stuff myself, but overall, it is a very, very strong tool to utilize because you can just get access to all these teams without having to comb through of all the other tournaments of data, right? And you just get the access to the open team sheet. You can figure out what works for you, what doesn't. You can see what you like, what you don't like. And, top teams of 6, right? And you can filter. I can filter by win rate. I can see this team is the worst win rate here. Obviously, LabMouse is only compiling the top performing teams, so win rates are a little bit inflated, as you see 59 being one of the lowest win rates here. But if you filter again, you get to the top highest win rate team, right? And these 6 Pokemon right here, looking very similar to that Toller team. However, they do opt to have that Shen Pao as well, right? So, and you can just kind of see, right? You click on this team. Oh, okay. These are the 4 people that used it. It got first place here, first place in this tournament, and you just kind of go from there, right? And once again, you can say that with anything. You can do that with a 5 Pokemon core, a 4 Pokemon core. Really, really strong. Now, if you have maybe a 2 Pokemon core in mind, you can always go over to the Find Teams tab, and you can say, hey, I want a team with Gouging Fire. If I could type, that would be amazing, Ryan. I want a team with Gouging Fire, and I want a team with Ogerpon Water. Actually, I'm going to use Fluttermane because it's easier to type. Right? I want a team with these 2 Pokemon. I'll press search. Boom. All of a sudden, I have teams with Fluttermane and Gouging Fire in front of me. And that's pretty much everything you can do with this tool. There's a few other things as well we'll get into in a second, but you can filter this by regulation. Maybe I wanted regulation E, maybe I want to go back a little bit, right? You can filter by the tournament name, the actual player utilizing said team, right? Maybe I just want to, what if I do this, right? Like what if I'll use my name for example, right? What if I wanted to see the teams that SableyeVGC was running, right? I'm not even sure if this is going to yield any results, but boom, right there, right? So maybe you wanted to track your top players, right? Let's throw a Joe UX9 in here real quick, right? Just I wanted to see what Joe's been using, right? If that could actually search, that would be amazing. Okay, well, I clearly spelled Joe UX9 wrong, but you know what I mean? You can filter anything that see, there we go. It just took a little bit, okay? That one did take a little longer than I was expecting it to, but right, you get to see what other top players are using as well. You get to filter by Pokemon. There is tons of usage stuff here that saves you tons of time. Another really strong feature, this one is getting very similar to the old school Pikalytics website, which is still up and running, but I do personally prefer LabMouse a little bit more. But let's take Incineroar for example. Let's click on usage stats. You get to see the percentage of usage over the amount of different tournaments. So in this one tournament, 38% usage. Then in this one, it was 37. In this one, it was 41, right? And you can kind of go on like that, right? Tournament standings, it's gone as high as first, and it's gone as low as 143rd, right? So you get to see some variation. A lot of this stuff doesn't really, in my opinion, capitalize too much. But Incineroar winning tournaments, definitely strong. If I'm trying to run Incineroar, what do I want to run on my Incineroar, right? So you got items, you've got moves. You can see a lot of players use safety goggles as that #1 item. Citrus Berry is common as well, along with Assault Vest. I would say those are the main three. And you can just kind of highlight that one line, right? Like I can remove them from the thing. If I only want to see safety goggles usage, I can remove the other things and I can see just safety goggles usage, right? There's tons of options here, right? Obviously with a top meta Pokemon like Incineroar, the data is going to be plentiful. Now, if you scroll down to usage list to maybe something a little bit less used, like let's say Spectre, right? You see it, they actually only have one tournament result for Spectre, right? So everything, the data is not really here too much. But what you do get to see is you do get to see its teammates, you do get to see the moves it's been using, you do get to see the items as well, right? And if this is the only team with Spectre, you can say, well, this is probably a pretty good Spectre build to start off with. And there's endless limits to LabMouse right now, guys. You can do this much more than I've described. Like I said, you can go to the tournaments, you can go to the top teams. There is tons of options here, right? You can sort by record, you can sort by the score, which I think their score is very cool. They give like points assigned based on rating. So like first in an online tournament is a certain amount of points, but first in an actual IRL tournament gives the team more points, right? So there's tons of that. You can filter by their scoring system as well. Filter by win rate, as I mentioned before. Just tons of opportunities to capitalize on this and explore the metagame at a glance and be able to capitalize on it as well. Because sometimes you look through tournament results and it's like, oh, I really like this core of 4 Pokemon, right? Who's been running it? Boom, okay, this guy's been running it. Okay, but now, not only do I see, oh, this person's been running it, I can say, okay, hold up, let me pull up this guy's paste. Let me pull up this person's paste. And now all of a sudden I have these 2 pastes and I'm like, I can compare the differences between their team compositions, maybe pick which one I like more, maybe merge them together a little bit. Tons of options with LabMouse. I feel like I got a little bit carried away, talking a little bit repetitive a little bit, but unfortunately, guys, sometimes it does end up being a little bit repetitive, but I wanted to make sure I got everything in. Website number 2 is going to be nothing crazy. It is going to be a damage calculator. I am personally going to recommend the Nimbasa City Post damage calculator. I will leave a link to this website along with all of the other ones down below as well. But damage calculation, guys, absolutely nothing new. If you've been playing this game for a while, you know all the damage is based on a calculation. You know you can probably calculate it based on a damage calculator. Any damage calculator will do. I do like this damage calculator because if I type in something like Fluttermane, I get a few baseline spreads. Now, I'm not completely sold on saying, yeah, these spreads are amazing, but I type in a specs Fluttermane. This is a general benchmark that I can kind of look at, right? And it's one of those ones where I wouldn't personally take this spread immediately without thinking about it, but it's definitely a very good benchmark to calc against. Look, oh, I want to make sure that I'm living a specs Fluttermane, but what's a common specs Fluttermane? This is a decent benchmark to look at. And beyond this, there's 3 things I want to talk about with spreads. One, if you are trying to build spreads, I want to say start basic. You always start basic with spreads. Do not spend crazy amounts of time on your spreads when you start building a team, because you don't even know if the team is going to function if it's a new concept of a team anyways. So you just build basic. I would recommend 252, 252, 4. It's a very quick way to start, get you into playing your game, get you into seeing if the team actually feels right before you invest too much time into it. However, if you wanted to start with a more specific benchmark approach that's very, very strong as well, I'll go over that really quickly. I want my Fluttermane to outpace Shenpao, right? I want my Fluttermane faster than Adamant Shenpao. Now, I know from the top of my head that Shenpao's Adamant is 187 just because I'm addicted to this game and I've been playing it for too long. However, you can type it in over here under the other side of the calculation. Oh, Adamant Shenpao, it hits 187. Okay, you go up. Oh, it should be 124, but I just know the calc, but it should be 124 right in there. But if you don't know it, you just go up and down with the arrows and like, oh, 188, I hit 188 right here at 124. Perfect. Now I'm faster than Adamant Shenpao. That's benchmark number 1 complete. Now I get to pick. Do I want benchmark number 2 to be defenses? Do I want benchmark number 2 to be offense? Let's say I want it to be offense, right? Okay, boom, 116. I'm not going to actually run a calc here. 116 gives me very, very, very nice options with a special attack on a Fluttermane. I have no clue, guys. I just threw this number in. That may be a benchmark. Don't quote me on that benchmark, right? And then you just start filling in the rest of things, right? Fluttermane really appreciates defense. So, like, lately, the HP stat's been really, really good. So I'm going to do it this way. I don't think this is optimal. Do not run this spread, guys. But as a general concept, start basic. You can go basic as 252, or you can play the benchmark approach, Find a speed you want to hit, find a calc you want to hit, and then dump the rest into other beneficial areas. Tons of options. But my main thing that I want to point out with damage calculation is to know your benchmarks. And I'm going to go Gouging Fire versus Shenpao, just because, Gouging Fire versus Fluttermane, just because it's a very somewhat common interaction, I would say. If I could type, this would be amazing though, right? And I can see right here that my Heat Crash is doing 84 to 100, right? And that's really, really good to know. Now, obviously, in a game, there are tons of multipliers. And I'm not saying you need to know how much your +1 Heat Crash does. Obviously, with Gouging Fire, getting to +1 is very common, so maybe you do want to know that. But I'm not going to get into that right now. At a baseline, you want to know your basic damage, right? I want to know my Heat Crash is doing 84 to 100, right? I don't necessarily need to know what it's doing at -1, at +1. Because if I know the baseline is 84 to 100, I know at +1 I'm probably doing, give or take, about 105 at minimum, right? Oh, I was very wrong. Oh, that's wait, hold up. That can't be right. That's got to be wrong. 1 second. That cannot be right. That is not +1. That is photosynthesis. Okay. Why is the proto up? Let's okay, I'm holding a booster energy. Yeah, there we go, right? I was still very wrong in the calc. Don't get me wrong. My math is not that great, but I do know I'm killing the Fluttermane at +1, right? If I know the benchmark, right? That still felt wrong. I don't know why that felt wrong. Regardless, if I know the benchmark, we're gaming. We're absolutely in a really, really good spot, because you can just adapt, because there's factors in the game that you need to know that you don't necessarily need to know all those factors, right? I'm never going to be able to memorize my stats at +1, neutral, and -1, or maybe even -2, +2, for every other Pokemon matchup in the game. But if I know the common Pokemon, in this case Fluttermane, going back to the Lab Mouse session, we had the Ogerpon, Fluttermane, those were the common two. If I know my calcs versus these common Pokemon, right? If I end up in a game, I'm like, oh no, I'm -1, they intimidated me. I still know that based on 84 to 100 damage on normal, if I'm at -1, I'm probably still doing a decent chunk of damage with 56 to 67, right? And now, granted, you're not going to get this number immediately. You're not going to come up with this number in your head, right? I'm not saying know that number, but you're going to know the 84 to 100. And then in your head, you can kind of quickly go, okay, I'm -1, roughly 0.67. If you're any good at math, you can kind of come up with that. But even not, you can kind of play off vibes, HP bar as well, right? But you'll have an idea of what it's going to do at +1, -1, because you know your benchmark. And knowing your benchmarks is really, really good. Like if I know Moonblast is doing 62 to 74 to me, right? Before they Terra. If they decide to Terra, all of a sudden, Well, this is probably one that this is the spread. This is probably what the spread is calced for, to actually live this. It just happens to be that way. That's gonna defeat my purpose, right, of this whole point. But like, if you can know the baseline damage calculations versus the opponent versus the popular Pokemon, you are going to have an advantage, because all of a sudden you're expecting your Heat Crash to do 84 to 100, but your Heat Crash just doesn't do that anymore. And your Heat Crash is all of a sudden, let's just say they're ridiculously bulky, and you look at that and you go, that was not 84%. All of a sudden, now you know this is a really bulky Fluttermane, and you can use that to your advantage. With that knowledge, you can bring that into games 2 and game 3, and something like that could be the difference in whether or not you're going to win a set or lose a set. So just knowing your baselines and realizing when things don't look like the baselines in the game is really, really strong, because it allows you to get insight on what your opponent is doing, on what your opponent's sets are, without necessarily knowing what your opponent's sets are, or without your opponent knowing that you know what their sets are. Right, it's a really cool way to try to gain a little bit of advantage. It's a little bit more advanced than trying to memorize all these calcs. Once again, I wouldn't worry too much about stuff like this going into like a regular tournament, but going into something like a regional, I am very much so making sure that I am elevating my gameplay and making sure that I know my baseline calc, so that if I get into a game scenario, I can kind of run the numbers quickly in my head going into the next turn. Oh, that Fluttermane is really, really bulky. I know that now. So now I know the Fluttermane is really, really bulky, so some of my other calcs may be off as well, right? And you can kind of go from there, and you just know that, and you take that to your advantage. That's my big point with damage calculation, because it's nothing new, right? We all know these damage calculators exist. We all know that you kind of want to calc for certain things, but actually knowing your calcs going into a tournament is a huge advantage, because you can just get the information from your opponent without them even knowing you're getting information from your opponent, and that is really, really strong, and it goes a long way. Resource number 3 is going to be Victory Road and Top Cut Explorer. I'm going to go over these relatively quickly, guys, because there's nothing new. There's nothing too not crazy concepts going on here. We're going to start with Victory Road. You get to see kind of what's going on in the metagame, what's going on overall in the Pokemon community on the homepage. Nothing too crazy. I'm really going to be focusing over here on the event calendar, because now you get events and you get results from all set events. I'm going to focus on the North American ones because that's where I'm familiar. Let's just go to Knoxville, right? We click on Knoxville, boom, we're taken to Knoxville Regionals, and we see what's going on, right? We see the top teams, very similar to Lab Mouse, where we can just kind of click the OTS and get our access to our OTS. Right, see what's going on, get that open team sheet. You get to see the Top Cut bracket, kind of how Top Cut played out. So you're going, oh, Luca lost in top 4. Who did Luca lose to in top 4? I really like Luca's team, but who did he lose to in top 4? Oh, Luca in top 4 lost to Toller. Okay, cool. Luca lost to Toller. Okay, well now I know Toller's team may have a good matchup into Luca's, or maybe you want to say, oh, that game was on stream. Let's go see why Luca lost to Toller. Was it a bad matchup? Was it hard reads? Was it did Toller just happen to play better that one set? Right? You get the chance and you get to analyze that now. Another feature that I really like, obviously the top cuts you can explore as you wish to explore them, right? But I want to scroll down because you also get usage stats. And I think the usage stats are super, super important, because you look at it and you say, are things checking out as you would expect them to, right? Like a 57 to a 61, that's a 4% difference going from day 1 to day 2. That's pretty normal, right? Incineroar, 38.8 to 38.1. It's converting about as you'd expect it. But if you look at something along the lines of, use Goldengo. Goldengo wasn't on the day 1 usage stats. It's very tough to do here because these usage stats are a little bit odd. I don't have the same variability jump that I normally would. Actually, I can use Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt, 18% usage. 18% of the entire player pool brought Raging Bolt. However, 31% of the player pool that qualified for day 2 is using Raging Bolt. So that showcases that Raging Bolt had a very good conversion rating, and meaning that people that brought Raging Bolt had success. Right now, obviously, this can go as far and as little as you want it to. You could analyze this a little bit more, but you can also look at this and say, okay, which Pokemon really fell off? Tornadus only fell off 2%. That's not too crazy, right? Amoonguss went up. Rillaboom was day 1 usage, 24%. It is not on the day 2 graphic, meaning the majority of people that brought Rillaboom did not qualify for day 2 with it. Now, granted, that could be a variety of instances, right? There are tons of reasons and reasons why things would go up and down, but it's something interesting to note. It's something interesting to say, hey, people who are bringing Raging Bolt are generally seeing a better conversion rate and are generally doing better, right? So maybe I should look into bringing Raging Bolt or making sure I have answers to Raging Bolt, right? That's one of those ways you like to look at that. That's one of those ways I approach this. Now, granted, like I said, tons of different variabilities as to why things do better and worse, but as a general rule of thumb, you can kind of see that now. And Why I don't like this approach as much as what LabMouse shows is because LabMouse is compiling all of the data and you can see it from there. But this is still very nice to see from a tournament basis, because now at next regional, if let's say I'm not going to the next regional, I'm going to the one after that, right? Okay, and the next regional, let's just say it's the same case. Not a lot of people are bringing Raging Bolt, but Raging Bolt is converting very well. Maybe it's time for me to consider utilizing Raging Bolt. People that are using this Pokemon are having success with it generally, right? It's something to watch that LabMouse doesn't necessarily show, because it shows it all in one. You can kind of see its breakdown over here. That's why it's good to sometimes look at tournaments individually. You get to see the breakdown of how things developed into the meta to become the 31% usage mon that it was, right? One other really strong feature in Victory Road is actually the rental teams feature. And you just get to get top rental teams that they've compiled, that have been released, and they've compiled them for you right here in front of you. And you just get to say, cool, I want to try out Tolar Webb's team. Boom, here's the code from the team, right? Just absolutely, you can just absolutely borrow this team, try it out, see if you like it, see how it feels. And you find some things you like about it. You find some things maybe you don't like about it. Find something that fits your playstyle. Obviously, in this case scenario, it won a regional. So obviously, it is a very well-built team, right? So you don't want to be making too many changes to it, obviously. But obviously, there's still obviously room for improvement. It's a very variable-based game, so there's tons of ways to maybe fit your playstyle and stuff like that. But long story short, you got this rental teams tab up here. Utilize it to your advantage, guys. Try out some teams that maybe are out of your comfort zone, maybe some popular teams, because like, oh, I need to know how to beat Tolar's team. Let me try out Tolar's team. And then as I'm trying out Tolar's team, I'm going to find out how other people are beating it. And I'm going to go, okay, that's a really good approach that I can use with my team as to how to beat Tolar's team when I have to play against it with my main team, right? Just a really cool concept there. And once again, I'm just going to say shout out to Top Cut Explorer, because they tend to have their information up a little bit quicker than Victory Road. So this is generally up day 2 of the regional before the regional finishes, which means on that Sunday, because a lot of times these regionals wrap up on the Sunday. So on the Sunday, you're going to be capable of looking at some of this stuff. It might not be as fully complete, but you'll definitely have the day 2 on the date to on that Sunday. And like, you have time on Sunday, right? Like Monday is generally the work day, right? So having the information up a little bit sooner is sometimes nice, because I have time on the Sunday. I don't have to wait till the next weekend where I have time for the Victory Road one to come out on the Monday, because now I'm busy all week with work, right? Like, this comes out on the Sunday. You can kind of start exploring things while you have your free time. And you just get to see it, right? You can filter by specific Pokemon, right? Oh, let's say, oh, the Shenpao is in day 2. There were 20 of them at Portland, right? And then you can filter, oh, how 15 of them were ghosts. Let's look strictly at those. We can filter, I want the Shenpaos that were with Dondozo. There were 3 of them. You see them right here, right? And you can just filter that way. Once again, similar to Victory Road, similar to LabMouse, you can click on a team. You get the open team list. All right, tons of options here, as I did close the Top Cut Calculator tab. But basically, tons of options here. Top Cut Explorer is really, really strong. Victory Road, really, really cool as well. Very nice to look at tournaments as opposed to at a glance, but looking at tournaments individually, which has its own merits as well. Up next is going to be Limitless. And Limitless is basically that online tournament hub, that online tournament platform that you are going to want to go to if you are looking to play in an online Pokemon tournament. Now, right, what you get to do is you can filter. If you don't want to just filter by VGC, you can change this. I have my filter set to VGC, so it's going to be all VGC, but you can filter. You can look at upcoming tournaments, upcoming video game tournaments. Boom, right here. You know what? I can change my filter. If I don't want to play VGC, I don't have to do VGC. They have other tournament games on this platform as well. I'm obviously not going to change mine from VGC right now, because that's what this video is about. That's what I'm about. But right, and you can just see, oh, these upcoming tournaments. Oh, this one's at a time I can play in, right? You know, I can just click on this one. I can go register for it, right? And this is a great website, finding online tournaments and finding tournaments to practice, because all these tools are amazing. You can study the data all you want, but at some point you are going to need to play an actual game. So having these online tournaments available is really, really strong, right? You have, like, let's just say this one. This one's got 20 registrants already, right? I would jump in, I can click on it, I get to see the details, I see what's going on in the tournament, I find the rules, right? Long story short, really, really strong for finding upcoming tournaments. And the other thing you can do is, once again, very similar to VR and seeing what's other and Top Cut Explorer and LabMouse. If you wanted to look at tournaments individually, here you can. You can click on the completed tournaments tab here, and you can see these tournaments that happened, right? Oh, we got the Trainers School tournament, 143 players. Maybe this is something I should look into, right? This is really good for looking at things at a glance. Oh, Registeel got second, right? What's going on over there, right? Oh, there's a Shenpao. at the top. Really, really cool as well. Why is there a Wotan in 13th, right? There's cool things like that as well, right? If I really like Jackson's team. Okay, let me go click on Jackson's team. I get to see, once again, get that open team list, kind of do some scouting that way. And you can see this on a tournament by tournament basis, as opposed to Labmas, where it is that compilation of all these stats and the rulings. Another cool tab is this metagame tab over here. Obviously, guys, just a heads up with Limitless, the Ogre Pawn is not broken up into the 4 different Ogre Pawn types. So this is all 4 Ogre Pawns. That is something I do hope they change in the future. However, that is not what's the case right now. But you can see Ogre Pawn, very popular, right? And you get to just kind of look at this, you know? And you can filter by the Swiss rounds. You can do the same thing you do. It's a little bit more work, but you can do the same thing you just did with the Victory Road stats, right? You can say, oh, Incineroar had a 46% usage in day 1, right? And then day 2, what happened in day 2? It had a 53, so it actually went up, right? And you can do the exact same concept, right, as you did on Victory Road, but only with everything that was entered into the tournament now, right? So if I go single, if I do get day 2 usage and I'm like, wow, Raging Bull had 65% usage day 2. Did it have that in day 1? Let's go find out. Raging Bull in day 1. Only 37% usage of Raging Bolts in day 1. Once again, converting incredibly, incredibly well into day 2, where it went up to 65, right? So you can utilize these tools on a tournament by tournament basis, see what's doing well, see what's not doing well. And of course, the main thing with Limitless though, guys, is playing in these tours. This is really why I wanted to feature it. A lot of the times I've had a lot of videos where I post, I say, oh, I got top 4 at this tour. And people are like, oh, I'm analyzing this tour. And they're like, wait, how do I play in these tours? This is that website that you're going to look for to play in those online tours and get that practice in. There's tons of tours. You're going to be able to find them at your local time at some point. Obviously, you're also going to be able to tell if it's on Switch or if it's going to be on the simulator on Pokemon Showdown, right? Tons of different ways to look at this, tons of different ways to approach which tournaments you want to enter. But this is the hub. Limitless is the hub for tournaments online. This is where you're going to want to go more often than not to find some upcoming tournaments. I would highly recommend this if you've got the itch to play the game. And I do recommend getting practice in from some of these, because a lot of the time, getting that practice in is very, very valuable. Last but not least is going to be replay analysis. Now, obviously, you can compile these results by yourself. However, that could be long, tedious, and if you're not very good with spreadsheets, it's going to be a little bit more of a pain than anything else. So I do strongly recommend the Palkia Academy replay analysis spreadsheet, or the Pacers, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to show you guys how to use this in just 1 second. But first off, for those of you that may not know how to save replays from Showdown, you're going to go over here. When the game is done, you're going to look in a position like this. You're going to have 2 options. You can download said replay, or you can upload and share the replay. You're going to click the upload and share replay button. It's going to pop up here. You're going to copy it over, and you're just going to paste it into the link box here. Now I already have one set up here from back when I was prepping for Charlotte Regionals. I will showcase this to you guys now. So you're going to put your PokePaste up here. You're going to put your Showdown username here. And what this formula does, or what this Google document spreadsheet does, whatever you want to call it, when you post your games here, you're going to be able to get a game by game. It's going to basically read the data from your games, and you are going to have an ability to just look at your data and see what's going on. Now, obviously, this page at a glance is incredible, right? You see your wins, you see your losses. You can kind of see the Pokemon you brought to the match. You see the Pokemon they brought to the match. See what Terra you used, what Terra they used, right? Current ratings of yourself, current ratings of opponents, right? Feels really, really strong, right? You get to see if the open team sheet was accepted. This was back before we had the best of 3 OTS ladder. For this document here, it has been updated since then, right? But you have other options too. You can also search. If I wanted to search by wins or losses, I can filter that, right? If I wanted to filter by losses, right? If I wanted to filter by losses, I could filter by that as well. I could also just reset it. But the real value of this comes from knowing how to interpret the data, because you just have data like this, and it's one of those ones where, now what? Right? So I think the real value from here comes at knowing how to analyze this and utilizing all this data that you have available to you on this document to your success. And the way the first thing I like to do with this is I like to go to matchup stats. I like to look over here and look at my worst matches. I say, wow, Gouging Fire, I have only beat 1 out of 3 games, right? That's probably pretty bad. If Gouging Fire ends up being a meta Pokemon, that could be a problem. Now, obviously, this is a little bit outdated, right? It's a very minimalistic sheet because I only have like 10 replays or 13 replays or whatever I have on it. So obviously data is going to be a little bit skewed, right? But I look at it, I'm like, wow, Gouging Fire, I've only won 3 games. So let's go back to the game by game, right? I can search for the opposing Pokemon. I'm like, oh, they had Gouging Fire. If I could type properly, that would be amazing, right? Oh, they had Gouging Fire. That was my worst matchup. Let's see what was going on here, right? And it's showcasing the 3 games where my opponent has brought Gouging Fire. They're saying I won one of them. Now, granted, all of this one was from this one matchup. So now what I can do is I can say, okay, games 14, 15, and 16, this is probably somewhere where I need to look at to say, hey, this is maybe an improper Gouging Fire matchup. Now, granted, this is very in a nutshell. Like I said, guys, normally you'd have a little bit more data after a bunch of replays have been exported onto this sheet, right? So obviously very limited data, right? But I'd say, okay, 14, 15, 16, those replays I want to go back, I want to look at. So I'd go back over here, I'd find replays 14, 15, 16. I would watch them back and say, hey, why am I losing this game here? Right? What is going on with me losing this game? Is it something I was doing? Is the opponent's team just too tough? Is there something I can't deal with? Analyze it in terms like that. Am I losing? Did I get unlucky? Did I get lucky into scenarios like that? They were leading this. Was that lead specifically a problematic lead for me? Right? Tons of ways to analyze that, looking at the matchup stats in general, right? You can do that with your worst. You can also, and I highly recommend doing it with your best. So in this case, you see I've beaten Incineroar 4 out of 4 times, right? I highly recommend going back to the game by game and changing the opposing Pokemon to Incineroar, right? Now I say, okay, this is actually 3 different matchups with Incineroar, and I happen to win all of them. Now, is my matchup into Incineroar really good? Who knows? But you can actually see that my matchup into Incineroar all 4 times has involved Gouging Fire, Shenpao, Ogerpon, Gouging Fire, Ogerpon, Gouging Fire, Shenpao, Ogerpon, Gouging Fire, Shenpao, Ogerpon, right? That seems to be, and as you look at this, you can say, wow, my matchup versus most Incineroar teams seems to be bringing those 3, maybe +1, right? Obviously, the different variations of the team also change things, right? Once again, limited doc, limited numbers. I can only showcase so much, but that's kind of how I would approach looking at this, because just saying, yeah, I have 4 wins versus Incineroar is awesome. But going back and seeing how you're consistently beating Incineroar, that's where you take this data to the next level. That's where this data is actually going to help you. Oh, I struggle versus Gouging Fire. Well, that's unfortunate. But struggling versus Gouging Fire, taking it back, having the data, going, okay, well, I watched these 3 games back. I could probably not bring this Pokemon to this matchup next time. Or, you know, be a little bit more aggressive. Don't let the Gouging Fire get some howls up, right? You can do that. You got to go back and look, right? You have the data. Gouging Fire is bad, but why is it bad? Is it bad because I'm getting hexed out? Is it bad because I'm making bad plays? Is it bad because I'm leading wrong? Is it bad because it just generally is a bad matchup, which it could very well be, right? And you can do the same, like I said before, for the offensive, for the wins as well. I strongly recommend doing it for wins as well, right? Especially for the popular Pokemon. I wouldn't worry too much, right? If your worst matchup is I've lost twice versus, I don't know, we'll just say Oricorio for now. Chances of you pulling an Oricorio at a regional is very, very unlikely, right? If that happens to be the worst matchup, I wouldn't worry too much about going back and analyzing that one, all that's said and done. Now, you might want to, just to see if maybe there's something inherently wrong as well. But overall, I would be more focused here. When utilizing it for this purpose, I would be more focused on key meta Pokemon and stuff like that. You also have now usage stats that are really, really important to look at as well. You get to say, okay, am I tearing a certain Pokemon a little bit too much? Am I tearing a Pokemon and is it working for me? Right? So there's a lot of options here. You can see here that I have won 6 out of 8 games when I was tearing the Ogerpon, right? And that's pretty good, right? So obviously Ogerpon is one of my bigger terrestrialization targets, along with Fluttermane and Shenpao on this team, right? Those are the mons I would be tearing on this team, generally speaking, right? So it's not surprising to see those be the only 3 I have teared for this very limited result, right? But you can look at this and sometimes you say, wow, every time I've brought Metagross, I've lost. Like, every time I've brought Metagross, I've only won 50% of the games. Now, granted, once again, small sample pool, but something like this is like, wow, I've lost. Every time I brought Metagross, I lost. Now you go back and you find the games where, hey, I brought Metagross to 4 games. What 4 games did I bring Metagross to? Let me just reset this real quick. But what games did I bring Metagross to, right? And you find the games you brought Metagross to, and it's like, why did I lose? Then you go back and you analyze it that way, right? Why did I lose? Why is Metagross not working? Obviously I brought Metagross because I thought Metagross was good. Did I accidentally misread that and say, whoa, I shouldn't really have brought Metagross to this matchup? Is that the problem? Or is Metagross just not doing enough in the matchups that I would want it to do enough into? Then that's where you can look back and say, well, Time to switch this up. Time to go back and reevaluate if Metagross is indeed the piece, right? Tons of ways to utilize this, right? The data, having the data is nice. You also look at, hey, I won 12 out of the 13 games I've brought Shenpao to. That is really, really strong. This one I wouldn't necessarily need to go back and check nearly as much, but you can check a few sample games and see, hey, why did I lose? Or maybe, hey, why did I lose the one game that I won, that I brought Shenpao to, right? Obviously I have a 92% win rate. Why did I lose that one game, right? Finding things like this is really, really strong. Lead pairs as well, really, really good to look at. See what you're bringing commonly, right? If I'm bringing Gouging Fire Metagross super, super commonly and I'm only winning 50% of the time, I may want to reevaluate how my approach at playing the team is going, because clearly the team is working, but that one lead itself has been causing me problems. Maybe I shouldn't be leading that. Maybe I'm leading it when I'm not supposed to be leading it. Obviously, the Gouging Fire Shenpao lead is really, really strong. Obviously, guys, once again, very limited documentation here, but you can see these stats. Obviously, you have your most strongest lead pairs, right? You see the lead pairs that are working for you really, really well, right? You see the lead percentage and win stats. Every time I lead Metagross, it's 50% chance that I win. That's not very good, or historically, it's a 50% that I win. Like, it's not very good, right? Every time I lead Ogerpon, it's only 78. Now, granted, 78% win percentage isn't bad at all, right? Especially once you start adding more data, right? Like, this is a very limited list, right? But this is how you look at this and you go, wow, every time I'm leading Shenpao, I won, right? So now you can say, maybe I'm supposed to be leading Shenpao with this team. Maybe I just got lucky in a few of these games. Maybe I shouldn't have led Shenpao, but I still got lucky, right? So it's about finding these spots in the data and going back and watching those games and saying, hey, this is why this has been working so well, because, oh, my opponent misplayed here. That's the only reason I won that game, right? Or I won the game, but could I have cleaned it up? I lost this game to hacks. Is it because of hacks, or could I have played better earlier to prevent the hacks? Right now, obviously, this is very similar, right? We've seen things like this in the past where you go, oh yeah, I'm winning, right? Did I win fair and squared? Could I have optimized my win? Could I have gone back and said, hey, but having the data in front of you and seeing where you're winning, where you're potentially not winning, and then analyzing why you're winning those games or why you're losing those games is really, really important. You also get a nice little move usage chart here as well, right? And I'm going to use Fluttermane, for example, here. And I've said this in numerous videos now. 99% of the time on Specs Fluttermane, you are clicking the first 3 moves. As you can see here, I never clicked that 4th move on Fluttermane, right? I'm clicking Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, and Shadow Ball. This is about what I'd expect for Fluttermane. This is probably pretty normal, right? And especially with limited data, I'm not going to get too much data out of this, right? However, something like this, once again, Icicle Crash, this is pretty, nothing is really sticking out. Like, I remember having one when I was testing for Worlds, and on my Zapdos, I had clicked Hurricane like 80% of the time. And that's scary. When you're clicking Hurricane 80% of the time, that is very, very scary, right? Obviously, that's not on the data right now, and I don't think I even have that Pacers document to show you guys anymore. But at that point, it's one of those ones, well, if I'm relying that hard on a 70% accurate move, maybe I should reconsider. Obviously, I want flying coverage. Maybe I should reconsider what my flying coverage is, so I'm not relying on a 70% accurate move 80% of the time I have my flying type on the field, right? So you can analyze it like that as well. Same with Ivy Cudgel, right? Like Ogerpon, this is pretty normal for an Ogerpon. I wouldn't say this is surprising at all, right? I'm going to be Spiky Shielding, I'm going to be Ivy Cudgeling, I'm going to be Horn Leeching, right? All of this stuff, I don't actually have any data here that's kind of wild. But if you look at this Rillaboom here, maybe I had U-turn as the 4th move, which I probably did at this point, right? And if I had U-turn as the 4th move here, I'm not clicking it. Obviously, very limited data, but if this had been after maybe like 30, 40 games and I just hadn't clicked U-turn, maybe U-turn isn't the right move for me, you know? Maybe U-turn just isn't right. Maybe I should be looking for maybe a high horsepower or something different that I can use to capitalize with Rillaboom a little bit better, right? Maybe that's something that's not great with Rillaboom, right? There is tons of data, guys. I only touched the surface with how you can go back and interpret some of this data. I don't want this video to go crazy, too long. So we will wrap it up here with the Pacers document, but the data here is here, guys. Once again, this document will be linked down below, and to make your own copy, since I think I forgot to mention it earlier, you open the document that's going to be linked, you'll click File, you'll click Make a Copy, and then you'll make your copy, and you'll be able to edit it, no problem. You'll be able to do your own thing. Pokepaste here, Showdown name here, go for that, drop your game links in, and you're good. I also believe there is a Chrome extension that allows you to pull all of your replays at once, so you don't have to keep doing it individually after each one. I will put that down in the link below as well, or in the description below as well, for you guys to potentially download if you prefer to do it that way. I do like going one game at a time. I think there's an advantage to going one game at a time, because I can kind of put the one game in, and then I can sit down and say, it just gives me that breath, rather than it gets me out of the whole, I'm just going to spam games on Showdown mindset. You know, I play a game, stop for a second, put the replays in the document. Don't necessarily need to do any data, but the method of stopping and putting said replays in the document is really, really helpful moving forward. Right? It just gives you that break from grinding Showdown, grinding, and all of a sudden just clicking buttons on Showdown, which is a very easy trap to fall into, right? Obviously, you have space for notes and stuff like that, but really, really handy document. By far one of the best tools out there right now for replay analysis. Once again, you can make your own version of this if you so choose, if you feel like you're a wizard with spreadsheets and all that stuff. But all the stuff here is really, really handy and comes in handy quite a bit when you're analyzing your gameplay. This is really, really good moving forward. That is going to do it for our list of tools and resources that will take your game to the next level. I look forward to hearing from you guys. If you guys have any thoughts or ideas or tools that you may use that I may have missed, or ways to utilize these tools that I also may not have mentioned in the video, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. I'm curious on your thoughts, curious if I did miss anything that is absolutely massive and has been a huge success for you guys as well. Of course, I can't possibly go over all of them, guys. There are too many tools out there. These were just, in my opinion, the best 5 you could use like that. Of course, guys, you also have the ability to watch content creators on Twitch and YouTube. And I remember when I started playing this game, it was really, there wasn't too many content creators. It was, for me, it was watching Cybertron. And I watched Cybertron, and I would pause the video before each turn, and I would say, okay, what do I think Aaron is going to do here? And then I would let the video play out, and it would be like, whoa, okay, Aaron didn't do anything that I thought Aaron was going to do. But then because Aaron was describing how his mindset works and his thought process, it allowed me to say, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Thanks. And then I'd move on. Eventually, as I kept doing that, I'd start realizing that I was making the same plays that Aaron would make. And at that point, obviously, this is very like robotic and very, very one-dimensional, so I don't necessarily recommend doing it too much. But being in the mindset, realizing other content creators are out there, utilizing the content creators that are out there to capitalize, realizing their knowledge at the game is valuable to you as well, kind of taking in as much knowledge as you possibly can. It's only going to make you better. So Twitch, YouTube, all the content creation channels like that, definitely support other creators, guys. They are they're there for you guys. They give out knowledge, right? It's definitely knowledge that I would be taking if it's there. Didn't want to put it on the list because it felt like it was like a cop-out answer, or oh, I can always just go to Twitch or YouTube and just watch content, right? But definitely take what they have to say, guys. There's tons of content out there to help you guys improve at the game. It's similar to videos like this one. But with that, guys, I am going to stop rambling. Thank you all so much for stopping by. With that, I'm going to get on out of here. If you guys do enjoy the type of video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, as I said before, I'm going to stop rambling. I'll catch you all in a future video.